let's talk about Splitgate 2, shall we? Apparently, Splitgate 2's relaunch is dead in the water again. Is it actually dead? Is it actually like dead? Let me see. Before we jump into it, let me see. Where do you find Splitgate 2? Maybe it's not a spacebar, is it? No. Is it just called Splitgate? Is that literally what it is? No, right? No. Right? Oh, it's called Arena Reloaded. Oh, wait, is this the one? There's no shot, right? This isn't the one, right? No, right? Oh my god, it is. It actually is. Oh, ooh. Oh man. I knew it was bad, but I never knew it was that bad, I'm gonna be honest with you. Let's go take a look and see what happened, shall we? This is
Man, it's already been another year. It's crazy how fast time is flying, but I hope y'all enjoyed holidays and New Year with family and friends, or just had a relaxing time at least. And yeah, first video of the year. And today we're going to talk about a live service going by the name Splitgate, which I don't think is enjoying a particularly great New Year. So Splitgate, for those who don't know, is essentially a first-person shooter with portals.
Yeah, of
course. The first game, once upon a time was really well received overall. Recently, it's been seeing a couple mixed reviews, but this is a game that kind of died off because the developers decided that they want to make a sequel and focus on that. Now, that sequel, once upon a time, was known as Splitgate 2, but things went awry on that front, and they actually decided to unrelease the game and then re-release it as Splitgate Arena Reloaded. And unfortunately, that's not been going particularly well. Now, in terms of critical reception of the re-release, we're seeing that recent reviews are sitting at mostly positive, with a lot of people actually liking a lot of the changes that were made in response to complaints surrounding Splitgate 2. But this is very much a case of far too little too late. So you can see right here, Splitgate 2 releasing for the first time, and the all-time peak concurrent player numbers sat at, a little less than 26,000 players. And that very quickly dipped into, the 4 digits, then into the 3 digits. And this is a game that ultimately never recovered. And the kicker is that at launch, Splitgate 2 actually did significantly worse than Splitgate 1 did. You can see right here that when Splitgate 1 fully launched, it launched with an all-time peak concurrent player number on Steam of, almost 68,000 players. Whereas right here with Splitgate 2, or, Splitgate Arena Reloaded, just, a little less than 26,000 players. That's quite the stark difference. And so with this re-release of Splitgate 2 in the form of Splitgate Arena Reloaded, the hope was that it would win back the player base, that all the fixes and overhauls in response...
These people don't understand how the gaming scene works. You only got one impression, and if you don't make that first impression correctly, 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna come back and play the game. That's all I gotta say. They're not gonna come back.
Once the community feedback would allow this game to thrive, and it would allow for essentially a major comeback. But that is not at all what is going on. You can see right here, looking at Steam charts, the original release of the game, and then it went back to beta at around this time period. And the re-release, you can see, happened here on December 15th, 2025. And the launch already was looking pretty rough with, a little less than 2,300 players at its all-time peak. And it's only been dipping since, with only, now hundreds of players coming back to play this game. This is plain and simply not sustainable for any live service. And you can see right here, even when this game was known as Splitgate 2.
The problem is, okay, so I assume he's gonna talk about it that he was talking about some political shit. No. That has nothing to do with it. The problem is, He talked about all of this shit during Summer Game Fest. Like, he was saying, oh, we're the better FPS player, and, we're gonna revolutionize and all this other stuff and everything, and blah, 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 right? Because he says, make FPS great again and everything like that. Brother, you didn't do anything. You literally announced a battle royale, and nobody cares about a battle royale. Like, everybody was sick and tired of, like, battle royales in general.
How quickly that player number dropped off, and we came to a point where it was just not a sustainable live service. The fact that we're so quickly reaching numbers
talking all big,
of
tough,
old
and everything,
Splitgate 2 already suggests that this live service is likely doomed to shut down in the not so distant future. So it launched, it kind of died, went back into development, went back into beta, it relaunched, and then died again. There were just a lot of things that went against Splitgate 2. Just its focus was more like trend chasing instead of sticking to what made Splitgate 1 special, what people loved about that game.
They became like Call of Duty,
decided to kind of
trends.
do what a lot of other games are doing, and that ultimately ended up like angering a lot of Splitgate 1 fans, or at the very least like made them lose interest in the sequel. And so Splitgate Arena Reloaded, the re-release, was all about essentially making Splitgate 2 more like Splitgate 1 and giving fans what they wanted out of a sequel for this series. And so, yeah, again, the critical reception for people who are playing this game is more positive. But in terms of the total number of players engaging with this game, due to the fact that the live service market is so oversaturated, there's so many, first-person shooter games competing for people's limited time, Splitgate Arena Reloaded ultimately just could not make much of a splash in this.
It's not just that, because the developers turned their back against the old community to go chase, the bigger piece of the pie. You're not gonna get that big piece of the pie. You gotta be a little bit more realistic, I just don't understand what they were thinking or so. Literally, we got it. I know how we can revolutionize our FPS game. We make a battle royale. Everybody's making a battle royale. We gotta do a battle royale. No, you don't. You don't. Stop. Everyone was getting sick and tired of battle royales. Everyone is still sick and tired of battle royales. They want a multiplayer game. That's what they want. They're just tired of like all of these companies just chasing the trend,
This overcrowded landscape. The fact that it made a bad first impression, lost a lot of people, and even with its attempted comeback, ultimately, again, it's just too little, too late. A lot of people have moved on, and Splitgate Arena Reloaded, the re-release of Splitgate 2, just doesn't do enough to, make it something that entices people to switch from what is their normal live service that they come back to day in and day out. It's very difficult to pull people away from, one or two live services that they've invested all of their time and money into.
That is also true, because because they made a battle royale, right? Because they wanted a piece of that pie. Most of the time, you're not gonna get those player base that have spent hours grinding on Call of Duty Warzone, Fortnite, and Apex Legends, and PUBG. These are like the top 4, like battle royale off the top of my head, anyways, right? This is kind of like basically just dominates the battle royale genre. You're not gonna beat them. Besides, on top of that, Call of Duty has their IP as Call of Duty because of the Call of Duty fan base. Apex Legends were the sole developers of Titanfall, and it has the vibe and feel of Titanfall. Fortnite has the most wacky collaborations and all of these skins and all of this other shit, and that's what makes literally, Fortnite stand out, because it caters to the kids. And then you have PUBG. PUBG has been like the most dominant one for a while now. So it's pretty popular in like what? The Asian side territory, right? For PUBG. I usually see a lot of Asian people playing PUBG a lot more, at least for like my personal knowledge anyway, so.
Splitgate Arena Reloaded ultimately, despite its portal aspects being really cool and unique, doesn't do enough to stand out from the pack. Beyond the bad first impression that Splitgate 2 made, beyond the fact that it made a grave miscalculation by chasing trends instead of, making Splitgate 1 but better. There's also the fact that the CEO of 1047 Games, the development studio behind Splitgate, came out like really overconfidently, like just cockily came out on stage at Summer Game Fest and talked about making FPS great again, wearing a hat that, you know, obviously has a lot of political implications.
No one cares about that. No one cares about that. People who actually care about that are literally just people on Twitter, okay? Those people don't matter. The problem is he came on stage talking all of this big shit towards, you know, the other FPS people, the other FPS, like, you know, players or games anyways, in the respected genre, saying, we can make FPS greater, but you're doing the same thing, man. You're doing the same thing. You're not making FPS great. You're making FPS worse. And then it just literally just completely just kind of like, people who actually care so about the political aspect of this, I'm like, nobody cares. Only people on Twitter care, okay? All right? It doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't matter to me. The problem is that he was doing all of this bark. He was barking all this shit, you know, talking his little chest out and everything like that. But at the end of the day, you're just a generic FPS game that was trying to do some chase trending.
Pissing off a lot of people. But really the main thing is like he was never ultimately able to live up to that, you know, make FPS great again
because
slogan.
He
like dissed Call of Duty on stage and talked about the grave state that first-person shooters are in right now and how he was going to be the savior of that, but the end result was anything but. And that was kind of the part that made this whole situation all the more humiliating. And then in response to the Make FPS Great Again situation, he talked about how he's not here to apologize and how he believes that the state of multiplayer FPS games is tragically stale and how he's going to be the one to change all that. But again, Splitgate 2 ultimately didn't. It actually regressed in terms of what this game should have been. It did not adhere to the Splitgate formula that fans of the series loved, and it ended up killing the series. And then there's the fact that he later came out and changed his stance yet again, saying that, you know, I'm making no excuses now. He did apologize after all. And so yeah, the way he handled communications and PR just made for really bad optics that Splitgate didn't need shortly before launch. And then when Splitgate 2 did launch, the player numbers were so bleak that by July of 2025, Splitgate 2 had to unlaunch, essentially go back to beta, and on top of that, 1047 Games had to lay off a bunch of folks in order to be able to sustain themselves. All this was relayed via the following social media post from the Splitgate development team, talking about how they finally heard, you know, players' feedback, how they agree with players, how they're going back to beta, and how they're gonna, you know, engage with the community, do more play tests, so on and so forth. And you know,
they got humbled so freaking fast, dude. I've never seen a developer. Well, this is like what, the second developers that have been humbled. The first one was from Hello Games from the space game, but they actually like kept their head down and started working on patches, and now it's a really great game. Now, should it have been on release? Yes, it should have been like that on release, in my personal opinion. But at least he learned at the end of the day. And then this developer, you know, decided to do the same thing, you know, but at the end of the day, well, he got humbled real fast.
Commend any efforts to try to rectify mistakes, but making a comeback from such a devastating situation is just incredibly difficult. It is such an uphill battle. Few games can truly make a comeback, you know, from a disastrous launch. We've seen it happen here and there, but that's, you know, more the exception than the norm. We've seen similar circumstances with live services like Amazon's Crucible way back in the day.
Oh my God, Crucible? Dude, that's a name and a half that I have not heard in a long time. Do you guys remember Crucible? Holy cow, dude. Amazon just has a bad track record on making video games. That's pretty much it, to be honest.
The game that actually went back into closed beta after its launch was so disastrous. And then I believe it's a game that ultimately never did relaunch because Amazon just wanted to cut their losses. Perhaps a more striking parallel is Multiverses, which went through the exact same journey that Splitgate did. This is a game that launched with monetization systems live and everything. I mean, they will say that, well, it was technically a beta, but it was as good as launched because the monetization systems were fully intact. And then after a while, the player base just significantly dipped and nosedive. Then they decided to unlaunch the game and work on it from behind the scenes. They changed engines and did a bunch of stuff. And then they relaunched it only for people to find that this new version of Multiverses was less feature complete and in some ways worse. And all of that ultimately ended in tragedy, as you can see here on SteamDB. Looking at the Steam charts, here's the first launch of the game. Pretty great all-time peak and current player numbers, but the drop-off, I mean, it was such a massive nosedive that led to the unlaunching of the game. And then when it relaunched, once again, we got pretty good peaks over here, but all of that dipped very quickly.
It's because of the
and now
monetization,
nobody's really playing this game because this game has announced that it will be shutting down its live service component, that it will be going offline. While Multiverses can still be played, single player, its online features have all been eradicated. Now, Splitgate 2, or Splitgate Arena Reloaded as it's known now, hasn't announced any kind of shutdown or anything, but there is little doubt in my mind that that is imminent, that is coming sooner rather than later, because the player numbers shown here are just plain and simply not sustainable. You can't only have a couple hundred players playing at the same time. Splitgate is a free-to-play game, which means that when it comes...
Unless those whales are dropping 24 grand every single time or so, this game is gonna die out.
Comes to making money, this game entirely relies on the volume of people playing and engaging with the title and the volume of people who are, engaging with the monetization systems. When there's such few players, it means that there's not going to be a whole lot of activity with the monetization systems that allow this game to make the money to be able to sustain, all of the expenses that come with keeping a live service game alive. So yeah, Splitgate.
And also on top of that, I think if I heard correctly, the red sec or so for Battlefield is pretty much dead right now. The battle royale of Battlefield, apparently it's also dead. That's what I've been hearing. I don't know if it's true or anything like that. I don't play it, so I don't really care about the battle royale aspect of the game itself.
So yeah, Splitgate 2 or Splitgate Arena Reloaded, it's as good as dead. And for all the, claims that were made by the CEO that they're here to make FPS great again, coming out on stage, trying to be essentially a Joseph Ferris, but without actually being able to deliver on the promises and the bold claims made, the end result is a live service, yet another live service that has ultimately ended in failure. That has stoked the flames too much. Another live service afflicted by just how competitive and oversaturated this market is, combined with major PR missteps as well as...
It's not just that, no. It's just this guy just chasing trends and saying that oh, we're gonna make FPS great. I'm gonna be the messiah. I am the hero that you need for the FPS scene because the FPS scene is so stale. But yeah, I'm still gonna do the same thing what they do. So it's so I'm just kind of so you're pretty much the same. You're not a well-known IP. That's number one. You had a very small fan base in the first Splitgate, and you're talking all this shit that you're saying that you're the messiah for the genre of the FPS scene, and you decided to copy what everyone else is doing. Good luck with that. That's all I gotta say.
Trend chasing that has ultimately alienated much of its community, and even with its attempt to come back to overhaul and to give the community what they want, how late that came and how it combined with all the other negative elements that made this game face an uphill battle for it to make a comeback. What we're ultimately looking at here is a game whose comeback attempt will likely not succeed. And this is a game studio that will likely suffer financially quite significantly. They've already done mass layoffs as a result of the first release's flop, and now the second release garnering little to no attention, and the player base being as minimal as it is right now. I cannot imagine that 1047 Games is going to be in a good financial position. I don't know if the studio will ultimately shut down or if they'll have one more attempt in them to try to make a new game that will allow the studio to recover financially if that launch is successful, or if the damage is so significant with Splitgate's flop that it will ultimately bankrupt the studio. But yeah, there you have it, folks. That is the tale of...
Hey man, it is what it is at the end of the day. That's what happens, bro. You do all this tough talk and everything, and at the end of the day, well, you get what you deserved. You didn't even deliver what you promised, and you said that you were gonna do that. Online gun gamers are loyal to their games. That is very true. That is very true. Even though they say every single time they want other games, they don't play other games. That's all I gotta say. But yeah. Anyways. Well, well, you decided to do all the talk, and look what happens. At the end of the day, you decide to do that, and, well, Lord and behold, well, you fucking shit on the bed and everything. All talk and no bite. That's pretty much just what he did. Honestly, the people who were upset or so are just a bunch of crybabies on Twitter. That's about it, so. But, like, the real people, like, the real actual gamers, when they heard, you know
your fucking place.
when I heard it too as well, when he said that he made a battle royale, I was like, I literally like rolled my eyes over because he was doing all of this talk and everything, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna be releasing to, I think it was like today, I think it was on that specific day, I think so, if I remember correctly, and we have a new mode. It's a battle royale, and I was like, really? You decide to do that? But yeah, anyways, that's the end of the video. You guys can comment, like, subscribe, do all that fancy jazzy stuff. I will be the messiah for the FPS scene. I will be the becoming of Jesus for the FPS genre. I will do all the shit talking, and I will show you guys how to make a better FPS game. Trust me. Put your trust in me, man. Sub to Co's OF Frogs. Okay, alright, buddy. And overall, to be honest, it's a sad day to see it. I wouldn't be surprised if the studio actually closes down by this year. I wouldn't be very surprised. Hey man, it's your fault at the end of the day. You decided to do all this talking, and well, Lord and behold, it is what it is. And yeah, sad day for Splitgate. Sad day indeed. And peace.